Today we're going to dive into a story that, honestly, even I still have trouble believing sometimes. It's one of those moments in life that makes you stop, look around, and wonder if there's something bigger at play than just luck or medicine. This is the day doctors called a miracle, and it all started in a way you'd never expect. Before I share everything, I want you to picture this. A regular day, no warning signs, nothing unusual, just the flow of everyday life, until suddenly, the world slowed down and shifted in a direction that would change me forever. I'm telling this story not because it's dramatic, but because when I look back now, I realize just how close I was to losing everything. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. And hey, wherever you're watching from, whatever time it is in your part of the world, I'm glad you're here with me. This story is going to pull you in, and I promise you'll feel it. Now, let's listen to the fascinating story in this video. The day everything shifted started out like any other, ordinary to the point of being forgettable. I woke up, made my coffee, scrolled through a few notifications on my phone, and thought about the long list of things I needed to get done. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming. But sometimes, life doesn't give you a warning. It just strikes. It began with a strange heaviness in my chest. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe I'd eaten too quickly, or maybe it was stress. I kept moving, ignoring the little signals, because that's what we do. We convince ourselves it's nothing. But within minutes, the discomfort spread. My arms tingled, my vision blurred, and my legs felt unsteady. Imagine your body suddenly betraying you when all you want is to hold on to normalcy. I remember gripping the edge of the kitchen counter, hoping it would pass, but instead it intensified. My heart raced like a runaway train, and I knew this wasn't just stress. My phone slipped from my hand as I tried to call for help, and in that terrifying moment, panic hit me harder than the pain. The world around me dulled, like someone had turned down the volume and dimmed the lights at the same time. I could faintly hear my name being called when a family member rushed in, but even their voice felt far away, like I was sinking underwater. That was the moment everything stopped feeling safe. The incident had begun, and there was no turning back. The collapse wasn't sudden like in the movies. It was slower, more terrifying, like watching myself fade in real time. My legs gave out first, and I hit the floor harder than I realized, though the sound felt muted, as if I was listening from far away. My chest tightened with a crushing pressure, and each breath was a desperate struggle, shallow and ragged, as if the air itself had turned against me. I could see the panic in my family's eyes. They were shouting, calling for help, but their words were muffled, broken, almost like echoes in a tunnel. I wanted to reassure them, to say something, anything, but my mouth wouldn't move the way I wanted. It was as if my voice had been stolen. My body was there, but I was slipping, and no matter how hard I tried to hold on, I was being pulled further away. The ambulance was called, though I barely registered the rush of footsteps, the frantic clatter of the door opening, the hurried instructions to stay awake, keep breathing. All I could focus on was the strange feeling that time was bending. Seconds stretched endlessly, and in those moments, I genuinely believed this was it, that my story would end right there on the kitchen floor. By the time paramedics arrived, I was halfway between consciousness and nothingness. They lifted me onto the stretcher, and I felt the straps tighten across my chest and legs. The siren wailed above me, yet I heard it like a faint hum. I remember staring at the ceiling of the ambulance, lights flashing in rapid bursts, and thinking, am I dying right now? It was the most helpless I'd ever been, my body failing, my mind drifting, clinging desperately to the last threads of awareness. I didn't know then, but this was only the beginning of the journey. The hospital doors swung open with a force that matched the urgency of the moment. I was rushed down long, sterile hallways lit with harsh fluorescent lights that made everything feel surreal. The paramedics barked out numbers and terms I couldn't fully process. Blood pressure dropping, oxygen low, possible cardiac event. Their words blurred into one long stream of medical urgency, while my body just lay there, heavy and unresponsive. Inside the emergency room, I felt hands everywhere, placing IV lines, attaching monitors, fitting an oxygen mask over my face. My world shrank to beeping machines and masked faces leaning over me, their eyes sharp with focus. It was like stepping into a different reality, one where my body wasn't mine anymore, just a patient to be stabilized. And yet, somewhere inside the chaos, I found myself wondering, how did this happen to me? Yesterday I was fine. Today I might not make it through. That thought kept circling in my mind, louder than the alarms and voices. The first night in the hospital was the hardest. Every sound, every cough from another patient, every squeak of nurses' shoes on the floor reminded me I wasn't in control anymore. Doctors came in with serious faces, speaking in terms like critical and unpredictable. My family sat quietly by the bed, pretending to be calm, but gripping each other's hands like lifelines. What scared me most wasn't the pain. It was the uncertainty. Not knowing if I'd wake up the next morning, not knowing if the treatment would work, not knowing if I'd ever get my old life back. But at the same time, something shifted. Even as fear swallowed me whole, I felt the tiniest spark of determination. I wasn't ready to let this be the end. The journey was only starting, and somewhere deep down, I knew I had to fight, no matter how impossible it seemed. Word count, open quote, open quote, open quote, waiting for continue script complete. Enjoy listening and subscribe to the channel to see the next video. The days that followed were a blur of monitors, medication, and endless tests. Every morning, a new specialist would enter my room, flipping through charts, adjusting treatments, and leaving me with more questions than answers. I felt less like a person and more like a puzzle they were desperate to solve. My body was weak, drained, but my mind, though foggy, clung to fragments of hope. The pivot point came when one doctor, a calm but firm man with kind eyes, pulled a chair close to my bed. He didn't hide behind medical jargon. Instead, he looked me straight in the eye and said, "I won't lie to you. This is serious, but it's not impossible." That sentence hit me like a thunderbolt. Serious, yes, but not impossible. Those words became my anchor. It was then I realized I had a choice. Either I could sink deeper into fear, letting the illness define me, or I could fight with everything I had. I chose the fight. And strangely enough, once I made that decision, I started noticing little signs, tiny victories that the doctors called improvements. My oxygen levels stabilized a bit. My heart rate evened out. The machines didn't sound as angry as they had before. The turning point wasn't just in my body, it was in my spirit. My family's presence became my fuel. Every time they walked in, their tired but determined smiles gave me a reason to keep breathing. Even the nurses, who'd seen countless patients, cheered me on, like my progress meant something to them too. Of course, it wasn't smooth. There were setbacks, nights when I felt I was slipping backward, when the pain was unbearable, when doubt crept back in. But then I remembered that doctor's words, "Not impossible." That phrase lit a fire in me, one I hadn't felt in weeks. And so, the pivot happened. Not in a dramatic movie moment, but in a quiet realization. Survival was within reach, and I wasn't walking this road alone. The climax of my story came during a night that still feels burned into my memory. The doctors had warned my family that things could swing either way, that despite progress, my body was still fragile. That evening, the alarms went off again. My chest seized, my breathing became erratic, and I saw the room erupt into motion as a team of nurses and doctors rushed in. I wasn't just lying there passively anymore. I could feel the battle raging inside me, my heart pounding unevenly, my lungs begging for air. Every second felt like a tug of war between life and something darker. I remember thinking, this might be the last round. Either I win or I don't wake up at all. Amid the chaos, one detail stands out, the look on my family's faces as they were ushered outside. Their fear was sharper than any needle or machine, and I knew I couldn't let that be the last image they had of me. Somewhere deep inside, past the pain and panic, I found myself fighting harder than I thought was possible. The medical team worked with precision, shouting vitals, adjusting tubes, pressing hands to my chest, pumping life back into me when my body faltered. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the numbers on the monitors steadied. My breathing evened out. The crisis passed. The room went quiet, except for the steady beep of the heart monitor, a sound I will never take for granted again. One of the doctors whispered, almost in disbelief, "That was close, very close." Another said softly, "It's a miracle." And in that fragile, exhausted moment, I realized something profound. I had been to the edge, stared into the possibility of nothingness, and somehow I was still here. Not because of luck alone, not because of medicine alone, but because life itself had decided I wasn't done yet. That night wasn't just a medical turning point. It was the moment I understood the true weight of survival. When the storm finally settled, I woke to a quiet hospital room. The harsh alarms were gone, replaced by the steady, almost soothing rhythm of the machines that had become my lifeline. My family was there, eyes swollen from crying, but smiling through their exhaustion. The doctors stood at the foot of the bed, and one of them simply said, "You made it." Honestly, this is what we'd call a miracle. Hearing those words hit differently. It wasn't just medical confirmation, it was validation that everything I had endured meant something. I wasn't just alive, I had been pulled back from the edge. And with that came a new clarity. Life is never guaranteed, and every breath is a gift. Recovery wasn't instant. It was slow, filled with small steps, literally. Sitting up, walking again, regaining strength. But each milestone felt like a victory. Not just for me, but for everyone who had stood beside me when hope felt so fragile. The message I want to leave you with is simple. Never underestimate the power of resilience, love, and belief. Sometimes the fight isn't about winning in the biggest way. It's about holding on long enough to give life another chance to surprise you. If you're listening right now and going through something heavy, I want you to remember, your story isn't over yet. Miracles don't always arrive with fireworks. They can be as quiet as the steady beat of your heart, reminding you that you're still here. And that's why I share this with you. Not just because it's my story, but because it could be yours too. Hold on. Keep breathing. Believe in the possibility of something greater. Because sometimes the day the doctors call a miracle might just be the day you find your second chance.